When I asked my daughter Madison about her wedding, the one I'd given up all my savings for, she told me, "Oh, it happened 4 days ago. Just a small thing, only family." And just like that, I realized after a lifetime of giving everything I had, I'd suddenly become unnecessary. A month later, she called. "Dad, the mortgage is overdue. Can you pay it this month?" That was the moment I finally changed our family history. But let me take you back to how it all began. It was a regular Tuesday evening in Columbus, Ohio. I was sitting in my little house, counting out grocery bills, when I heard the slam of a car door, loud as a gunshot. 7:30 p.m., and Madison's heels were clacking up the steps, as fast and nervous as a woodpecker hunting a tree. I opened the door to see my only daughter, mascara smeared down her cheeks, clutching a stack of wedding magazines. "Dad, you have to help me. You have to save my wedding." No hello, no warning, just a desperate cry. She shoved right past me, pacing my small living room while the humid Ohio summer pressed in from behind her. "Madison, slow down," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "What's going on?" She stopped by the window and turned to me, her eyes wild. "They need $40,000 by Friday, or we lose the venue. Everything's ruined, Dad. Everything." My old recliner groaned under my weight as I sat down, heart already racing. The only lamp cast big shadows on the wall, the old AC droning in the background. Madison walked back and forth, her breathing quick and shallow. "40,000, Dad. That's everything you have, right?" I nodded slowly. I'd spent 15 years building that emergency fund, working late shifts, skipping vacations after Linda died. Madison dropped into the chair across from me, magazines spilling everywhere. "I didn't want to ask you, Dad. But this is my only wedding. This is my day. The day I'll remember forever." The way she said it, her voice cracking, I suddenly saw the 8-year-old Madison, skin knees, believing her dad could fix anything. My hands shook as she handed me a glossy brochure for the Shady Pines Country Club Ryan and I visited last month. "I dreamed of walking down the aisle in Mom's dress, seeing you smiling in the front row." Linda's words echoed in my mind. "Never let our girl down, Frank." And for a second, it was like Linda was still in the room, her hand on my shoulder, telling me to help. "But sweetheart," I said gently, "that's everything I have." Madison's tears turned into sobs. "Ryan's between jobs. My contract work dried up. We've been living off credit cards, hoping something would break. But nothing did. 40,000. The number rattled in my chest like hail on a tin roof. Money I planned to leave her anyway, but not like this. "You always said you'd be there for me, Dad," she whispered. And she only ever called me Dad when she wanted something big. We both knew it. She was desperate, and I was her last hope. I looked again at the photos: crystal chandeliers, lakeside gardens, the kind of place I could never afford even in my dreams. Then I looked at Madison, her designer bag worth more than my monthly groceries, hope flickering behind her tears. The AC clicked off, leaving us in heavy silence. I finally said, "When is the wedding?" "June 28th, 6 weeks away, Dad. If I don't secure the venue, I'll lose everything." She wiped her eyes. 6 weeks. I did the math: Social Security, pension, a little from Linda's insurance. I could just barely make it work. I always made it work. I finally sighed, my shoulders slumping. Okay. I'll do it." Her head snapped up. "You mean it?" And she nearly knocked over the table, hugging me so tight it hurt. For a moment she smelled like the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest. "I love you, Dad. You're saving my whole life." As quickly as the tears came, they stopped. She kissed my forehead, scooped up her things, and was out the door. "I'll be back early tomorrow for the money. 9:30, I have to get to the venue by 11. The door shut, leaving me staring at wedding brochures and wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. The morning sunlight came creeping through the curtains, waking me before my alarm. I hadn't slept more than a couple hours. All night, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by bank statements, calculators, cold cups of coffee, and the glossy wedding magazines Madison had left behind. I kept running the numbers in my head, turning over every cent. My hands ached from counting bills and my stomach was twisted in knots. $40,000, my entire safety net, the legacy I'd built since Linda passed. But how could I say no to my only child? At exactly 9 o'clock, Madison's car pulled into the driveway, 30 minutes early, her timing never changing. Through the kitchen window, I watched her check her lipstick in the mirror, looking more like a CEO than a nervous bride. She didn't even bother knocking, just breezed into the house, her high heels clicking across the linoleum. "Morning, Dad," she said cheerfully, as if nothing was out of the ordinary, settling into the kitchen with her phone already in her hand, scrolling through texts. "Give me a minute to get dressed," I mumbled, still in my old robe, but she just smiled, too busy to notice my discomfort. "Take your time. I'll wait." In my bedroom, I stared at the safe tucked behind the dresser, hidden beneath Linda's jewelry box. My hands shook as I dialed in the combination. Linda's birthday, as always. I pulled out the thick envelope, filled yesterday at 3 different banks to avoid any awkward questions. 40,000 in fresh, crisp bills, a lifetime's savings. The most money I'd ever held at once, and now it was all going away in seconds. When I got back to the kitchen, Madison was tapping her foot, phone buzzing with messages. Probably Ryan, checking the timeline. I laid the stacks of bills neatly on the table, my hands trembling. "When exactly is the ceremony?" I asked, trying to make small talk, pretending this was normal. "Oh, Dad, there are still so many details to work out." She waved her hand, eyes fixed on the envelope. "The venue handles most of it. Worth every penny." She never looked up, never even asked about my night. "And the guest list?" I pressed. "How many people?" "Nothing fancy, just medium-sized." "Please don't worry about the details," she said, thumbing another quick reply to a text, her gaze still glued to her phone. I finished counting. 40,000, every cent. I slid the envelope across the table. Madison snatched it with both hands, clutching it to her chest. "You're the best father in the world, Dad. I mean it." Her hug was quick, distracted. Over her shoulder, I caught a glimpse through the window, her car loaded with suitcases and bags. "You going somewhere?" I asked. "Oh, that? Ryan and I are thinking about a weekend getaway before the wedding rush. Just to relax." She kissed my cheek, envelope tucked into her purse, then hurried out. "I'll call you later with updates," she called from the driveway, already halfway to her car. The engine roared to life, and she was gone, leaving me alone, the last of my savings taken away in less than an hour. I stood on the porch, watching the dust settle. The air was thick and hot, and my chest felt hollow. Inside, the house felt too quiet. I wandered around, picking up one of the wedding brochures she'd left behind, Shady Pines Country Club. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, gardens like something out of a Hollywood movie. I tried to picture Madison there, smiling in a white dress, walking down the aisle on my arm. What else was I saving for anyway? Linda was gone. No one to travel with, no fancy dinners, just me and the TV in a quiet house. Maybe I'd finally done the right thing, even if it hurt. By afternoon, the silence pressed in on me like a weight. I needed fresh air. I grabbed the wedding brochure and an old photo album, heading for the back porch. The oak tree in my yard, planted by Linda when Madison was born, offered a little shade. The cicadas buzzed, and I flipped through pictures of Madison growing up. There she was at 8, wrapped in a white sheet, pretending to get married in the backyard. When I grow up, you'll walk me down the aisle, Dad. I'll have the most beautiful dress and the biggest cake. I remembered Linda watching us from the kitchen window, laughing. I turned more pages. Madison at 10, sketching wedding dresses from magazines. At 16, building a scrapbook of wedding ideas. At 22, bringing home a different boyfriend every year, while I wondered if any of them deserved her. The rope swing I'd built for her still hung from the tree, faded and frayed. My iced tea was warm now, the ice melted. 3 hours had passed since Madison drove away with my life savings, but somehow I felt a strange peace. Maybe I was finally free. No more worrying, no more calculating bills and pinching pennies. I'd done my duty as a father. The venue brochure lay open in my lap. I tried to imagine Madison in a white dress, walking down the aisle, flowers everywhere, me smiling at the end. The image made me smile, even as doubt crept in. Why had she been in such a hurry? Why so secretive about the details? Wedding stress, I told myself. That's just how brides are. A neighbor's lawn mower started up somewhere down the block, mixing with the cicadas and the distant hum of air conditioners fighting the Ohio summer heat. I watched the sun sink lower, shadows stretching across the yard. I closed the album and headed inside to start dinner, feeling strangely content, unaware that I'd just bought my daughter a wedding I'd never see, and that everything I thought I knew was about to come crashing down. 3 days slipped by in a quiet routine, but beneath it all, a strange heaviness grew. On Wednesday morning, I finally reached for the phone, my coffee cooling in its mug while wedding brochures still littered the kitchen table. I dialed Madison's number, nerves prickling under my skin. "Hey, Dad." Her voice sounded rushed, like she was walking while talking. "I'm a bit swamped right now. The caterer's a mess, and the florist just changed the arrangements last minute. Can I call you back later?" She never did. By the first week of June, I'd left 5 voicemails, each one careful, gentle, never wanting to sound like I was intruding. Every time I called, it was the same story: problems at the venue, Ryan's unpredictable work schedule, family drama on his side. "Dad, you've already done enough," she'd say, and then hang up before I could offer more help. 8 weeks of this dance went by, and still, I had no real details about the wedding. I didn't know the church, the guest list, or even what time the ceremony would be. Every time I tried to press Madison for answers, she got vague, her voice growing small and distant. "When exactly is the ceremony, Madison? I need to get my suit cleaned." We're still finalizing the date, Dad. Ryan's work is up in the air, and his mother isn't sure she can travel. I'll call you tomorrow." But tomorrow never came. Summer arrived heavy and hot. The old rope swing hung motionless from the oak tree, the grass turning dry and brittle. Inside, my phone stayed stubbornly silent. Even my neighbor, Tom, noticed how little I talked about the wedding now. "You doing all right, Frank?" he asked one evening, catching me sitting on the back porch with a glass of lemonade, staring out at nothing. "Heard Madison's wedding's coming up." I managed a weak smile. "Supposedly. Haven't heard much lately. Maybe you should drive up there, see how things are going." He said it gently, not knowing the full ache behind my eyes. "Sometimes kids just get overwhelmed, that's all." But deep down, I was already starting to wonder what was really going on. By July 15th, with temperatures climbing into the 90s, I made my last call. Sitting in my kitchen, the air conditioner humming, I dialed Madison's number one more time, letting it ring until her voicemail picked up. "This is getting ridiculous," I muttered to the empty room. "Call me back or I'm coming over." All afternoon, I waited, checking the phone every half hour, certain it was broken. But it never rang. Instead, a cold certainty settled in my stomach. Madison was deliberately avoiding me. The same daughter who used to call every Sunday, just to tell me about her week, was now acting like I was a nuisance. I watched the sun sink behind the oak tree, the sky turning shades of gold and bruised purple. My truck keys hung by the door, glinting in the fading light. For 4 days I wrestled with the idea: should I go to Columbus and see her, or stay here and pretend everything was fine? Finally, on Saturday morning, July 19th, I gave up pretending. I showered, put on clean jeans and my best blue shirt, the one Linda always said made me look sharp. I tucked Madison's address into my wallet, bought a cup of gas station coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, and pointed my old Ford east, toward the city. The drive felt endless. Fields and farms gave way to new suburbs, all tan siding and postage stamp lawns. I barely noticed the radio. My mind spun with imaginary conversations, Madison laughing, showing me pictures from dress fittings, maybe even apologizing for being so busy. But when I finally pulled into her apartment complex, one of those new developments where all the buildings looked exactly the same, I saw her blue Honda parked right out front. She was home. I killed the engine, heart pounding, and climbed the stairs to her unit. Apartment 204, the number sharp and clean on the door. I knocked twice, firmly, and waited while muffled footsteps approached. The door opened a crack. Madison peered out, still in pajamas at 10:30 in the morning, hair unbrushed, eyes wide with surprise, and something else. Fear, maybe? "Dad, what are you doing here?" she said, voice tight. "You haven't answered my calls. I got worried." She fumbled for a response, finally stepping aside. "Come in, I guess, but I can't visit long. Ryan and I have plans this afternoon." Her apartment was smaller than I'd imagined. White walls, expensive-looking furniture, wedding cards scattered on the kitchen counter, some still unopened. On the coffee table, several picture frames lay face down. She moved nervously between the kitchen and living room, straightening magazines that didn't need straightening. "Honey, I need to know about the wedding," I said softly, searching her face for the little girl I remembered. "When is it, really?" She froze, hands gripping the countertop. "Why do you need to know?" I kept my voice gentle. "Because I gave you everything I had for this day, Madison. Because I've waited 2 months to hear from you. Because I'm your father." Her shoulders slumped. Tears filled her eyes, real ones, not the practiced ones from months ago. "The wedding was 4 days ago, Dad. I'm sorry." It felt like a physical blow. I staggered back, clutching the door frame. "You're joking," I whispered. "Please tell me you're joking." But she wasn't. Her voice was small and breaking. "It was just immediate family. Tiny ceremony at Ryan's parents' church. We wanted something simple." Immediate family? The words echoed in my ears like a bad dream. I stared at Madison, seeing a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "You want to see the video?" she offered, hands shaking as she held out her phone. I turned away, cold inside. The dreams I'd bought for her, gone, traded for a secret wedding I hadn't even been invited to. I didn't even want to see the pictures. For a long moment I just stood there, the silence between us as thick as concrete. My daughter shifted from foot to foot, eyes shining with tears she wasn't even trying to hide anymore. I could see her hands trembling, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "We wanted it small, Dad. Just Ryan's parents, his sister and brother. Ryan thought it would be easier, less stressful for everyone." "Easier for who?" My voice came out thin and sharp. I couldn't keep the pain out, no matter how hard I tried. "You spent months making me believe this was the most important day of your life, and I wasn't even invited?" She looked away, twisting the hem of her t-shirt, searching for words. I thought you'd understand. I didn't want a big show. I'm sorry. Really, I am." I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. The truth was, it hurt more than I could admit. Not the money, not even the lies, but the feeling that I'd become just another distant relative, someone to be excluded. And after everything Linda and I had sacrificed. Madison tried to fill the silence. We hired a photographer. The church was decorated with wildflowers. I wore Mom's dress, and Dad, I really was thinking about you, even if you weren't there. I didn't answer. I couldn't. She held out her phone again, showing me a frozen image from the ceremony. There she was, my little girl all grown up, radiant in a simple white dress, standing next to Ryan, both of them grinning in a tiny chapel. But I wasn't in the picture. I wasn't even in the story. No, I finally said, pushing the phone away. My voice was cold and distant, even to my own ears. Madison's face fell, her lower lip trembling. Dad, please try to understand. This was about us, not anyone else. We had to use the money for other things: the apartment deposit, Ryan's car payment, some old debts. The actual wedding only cost a couple $1,000. A sick, hollow feeling settled in my stomach. I'd given her everything, and she'd spent almost none of it on the wedding at all. You played me, Madison. I said it quietly, not in anger but in shock. You lied to me. You made me believe I was helping you have your dream day, and it was all just a way to pay your bills. She flinched, as if I'd slapped her. It wasn't like that. We were in trouble. You always said you'd help if I needed it. You needed help, and you chose to lie to me instead of asking for it honestly. You didn't just shut me out of your wedding, Madison. You shut me out of your life. She started to cry in earnest then, big, gasping sobs that shook her shoulders. I'm sorry, Dad. I am. But we just couldn't see a way out. Ryan's job disappeared, my freelance gigs dried up, and the bills kept coming. I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. I watched her for a moment, this adult woman who still looked so much like the little girl I'd raised. For a moment, I almost believed her. But then I remembered the envelopes, the secrecy, the way she'd rushed out with my money, never looking back. I turned away, heading for the door. I have to go. Dad, wait. Please. Don't leave like this. She reached for my arm, but I shook her off gently. I hope you find what you're looking for, Madison. I really do. But I'm done being your emergency fund. My voice was steady now, cold as glass. Goodbye. I walked out into the muggy July air, every step feeling heavier than the last. The sun was blinding, but all I could see was the past 35 years, every birthday party, every scraped knee, every late-night story. I felt them slipping away, replaced by this new reality. I wasn't needed anymore. Maybe I never really was. Back in the truck, I sat for a few minutes, staring at the steering wheel. My hands shook, not from anger, but from the finality of it all. For the first time since Linda died, I felt truly, completely alone. The drive home was a blur of summer heat, highway signs, and swirling thoughts. I barely noticed the landscape, my mind stuck in a loop of old memories and new regrets. Once, Madison had called me every Sunday, even after she left for college. Once, I'd been the hero who could fix anything. But those days were gone. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the mailbox was overflowing with bills and advertisements, more wedding brochures, and a thick envelope from the bank. I gathered everything into my arms, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. I went inside, dropped the pile on the kitchen table, and sat down in my empty house. I started sorting through the mail. Most of it was junk, but one envelope caught my eye. It was from Madison's mortgage company, urgent, red letters stamped on the front. My heart dropped as I tore it open. Notice, payment past due. Madison's name was on the account, but so was mine. I'd been making her payments for a year, always with the promise that she'd catch up soon. This one was overdue, by 4 days. The same 4 days she'd been married, without telling me. Suddenly, everything snapped into focus. Not only had she lied about the wedding, but she'd been relying on my money to keep her whole life afloat, and hadn't even bothered to tell me. My home office, once Linda's sewing room, was now cluttered with stacks of canceled checks and old receipts. I pulled out the folder labeled Madison House Help and spread out a year's worth of records. Every month, I'd sent the payment, over $1,000, sometimes more. Add that to the $40,000 for the wedding, and I realized just how much I'd really given her. Over $60,000 gone in a year. And for what? A secret wedding, a pile of unpaid bills, and a daughter who saw me as a walking ATM. The afternoon sun slanted through the window, dust motes spinning in the golden light. Outside, the world went on as normal. Neighbors mowing lawns, kids riding bikes. But inside, something in me had shifted for good. For the first time in my life, I started to wonder, what would happen if I just stopped helping? Sunday morning dawned gray and restless. I woke before sunrise, feeling the clarity that sometimes comes only after you've been broken in half. I sat at the kitchen table, the documents from last night spread out like a battle plan. Bills, bank notices, letters from Madison's mortgage lender, all proof of a year's worth of sacrifices I'd made, and all the evidence I needed that something had to change. Strong coffee in hand, I stared at the numbers until they lost meaning. For 12 months, I drained my pension, cut corners on groceries, skipped doctor's appointments, just to keep Madison and Ryan's lives afloat. Every month I told myself it was the last time, and every month I caved. Not anymore. By 8 a.m., I picked up the phone and dialed the mortgage company's customer service. After a few minutes on hold, a woman answered, cheerful and efficient. "Hello, this is Brenda at Buckeye Home Loans. How can I help you today?" "My name's Frank Edwards," I said, voice even. "I'm an authorized payer on my daughter Madison Carter's mortgage, account ending 3417. I'm calling to cancel all future payments. Effective immediately." There was a pause as Brenda typed on her keyboard. "Sir, are you sure you want to discontinue the automatic payment? I see you've been making these on behalf of Ms. Carter for over a year." "I'm very sure. She'll have to handle it herself now." Brenda confirmed the changes and told me Madison and Ryan would be notified. When I hung up, a surprising sense of relief washed over me. It was like a heavy chain had been cut from my neck. The next thing I did was gather up every remaining document, old bills, canceled checks, insurance records, and start reorganizing my budget. For the first time in years, I realized how much extra money I'd have if I just stopped paying for someone else's emergencies. My monthly expenses shrank by over $1,000. The numbers stared back at me, solid and real. For once, my money would go to things I wanted. I went out to the garage, where Linda's old jewelry box still sat dusty on the shelf. I polished it, then set it on my workbench and started sketching plans for a new project, a cherrywood keepsake box I'd never had time for. Building something with my own hands brought me a peace I hadn't felt in months. Late that morning, as I wiped sawdust from my shirt, the phone rang. I saw Madison's number flash on the screen and almost didn't answer. But curiosity, or maybe habit, got the better of me. I picked up on the third ring. "Hello? Dad?" Madison's voice was breathless, panicked. "Did you talk to the bank? They called and said the mortgage payment's overdue. What's going on? They're threatening foreclosure. What are you going to do?" I leaned back, letting her words hang in the air. For the first time, I didn't feel any panic, only a steady sense of calm. "I'm not doing anything, Madison," I said. "That's your responsibility now." "But Dad, you always help. You promised you'd always be there for me." Her voice climbed into the range that used to make me drop everything. "I helped the daughter I thought I had," I replied quietly. "That person doesn't exist anymore. The person I see now is a stranger who uses love as a credit line." She broke down into sobs, pleading with me. "We'll lose everything. Please, Dad, you can't just abandon me. What about family?" I took a long breath, watching dust float in a sunbeam across the workbench. "Family doesn't lie about weddings, Madison," Family doesn't use love to squeeze out another payment. Family doesn't shut out the people who've given up everything. There was a long, desperate silence, punctuated only by her ragged breathing. What are we supposed to do? She finally asked. Ryan's looking for work, but I can barely cover groceries. You do what you should have done from the start, I said, my voice gentle but unyielding. You figure it out for yourselves. She cried harder, a wounded sound that, for the first time, didn't break me. I remembered the moment she offered to show me the wedding video, the casual cruelty of it, and felt any remaining guilt burn away. You can't mean this, she whispered. But I did. And for the first time in years, I stood by my decision. You made your choices, Madison. Now you live with them. I hung up the phone, hands steady, heart pounding. I felt free, truly free. The afternoon light slanted through the window as I went back to my workshop. For once, I spent my time and energy on something that would last, something that belonged only to me. That evening, I grilled a steak on the porch, the sizzle and smoke a celebration. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, thinking about all the years I'd eaten cheap dinners to cover someone else's dreams. Across the fence, my neighbor Tom raised a beer in salute. You're looking more relaxed than I've seen you in months, Frank. It's a good day, I replied, smiling for real. The first of many, I hope. I went to bed early, a feeling of contentment settling over me for the first time since Linda passed. I dreamed of her that night, her laughter echoing in the old house, as if she were telling me I'd finally done the right thing. And for once, I believed her. August rolled in hot and restless. For the first time in years, I felt the house belonged to me again. Each morning, I made coffee without thinking about bills piling up for someone else. I fixed a leaky faucet, started repainting the kitchen, and even bought myself a new refrigerator, something I'd postponed for years while paying Madison's debts. I found myself walking into local stores with a confidence I hadn't felt since before Linda got sick. At the hardware shop, the clerk smiled, noticing I was whistling. You're in a good mood today, Frank, he said. Best I've felt in a long while, I replied. Every week, my bank account grew healthier. I made lists of small things I'd denied myself. A fishing trip to Lake Erie with Tom, a new pair of shoes, books I'd always meant to read. For the first time, I started living my own life. But silence from Madison was its own weight. She hadn't called in weeks. Every time my phone rang, a tiny ache flared in my chest, hoping it was her, even after everything. It's hard to stop being a father overnight. One Tuesday afternoon, as I painted the last kitchen cabinet, the phone rang and her number appeared. My brush stopped mid-stroke. I let it ring a few times, unsure if I was ready. Old habits die hard. Finally, I answered. Dad. Madison's voice was strained, on the edge of panic. Thank God you picked up. I've been trying for days. The bank says the mortgage is overdue another month. They're threatening foreclosure. When are you going to pay it? I wiped my hands on an old rag, taking my time before answering. Through the window, I could see Tom mowing his lawn, his life as steady as always. I'm not, I said simply. Her shock was instant. What do you mean? You can't just stop. We'll lose the house. That's not my problem anymore, Madison. You and Ryan will have to figure it out. But Dad, you always said you'd be there for me. You promised. How can you just turn your back on your own daughter? I felt the anger rise, but kept my tone calm. I helped the daughter who treated me like family, not the one who used me and shut me out of her life. You decided I wasn't important enough for your wedding, or your real struggles. Now you get to be an adult and handle it. She started to sob, no longer able to keep up the act. I don't know what to do. We're going to lose everything. Please, Dad. I'm begging you. I sighed, feeling only the echo of the sympathy I used to have. You have to learn, Madison. The way I did, the way your mother and I did. When you were a child, I protected you. But you're not a child now. You made your choices. She was silent for a long time. Then her voice came back small, defeated. Is this really it? After everything we've been through? I hesitated, heart heavy, but my words were firm. No one's abandoning you, Madison. But you abandoned me first, when you lied, when you left me out, when you only called for money. For the first time, she didn't argue. She just cried real, broken sobs that seemed to go on forever. After she hung up, I stood in the kitchen, hands braced on the countertop, the house utterly quiet. I wanted to collapse, to take her pain away, to go back to the days when fixing a scraped knee and a bowl of ice cream solved everything. But those days were gone. I put on my old jacket and walked out into the evening, letting the cool breeze calm my nerves. The sun was setting, gold spilling over the neighborhood, as if the world itself was letting out a long, slow breath. I walked down to the little park where Linda and I used to take Madison as a child. I sat on a bench beneath an old elm tree, watching kids play on the swings. For a moment I let myself grieve, not just for the money, but for the lost years, the lost trust, and the little girl who used to run into my arms. By the time I walked home, I felt lighter. I knew I'd done the right thing, even if it hurt. Over the next week, Madison called a few more times, each message a little more desperate. Ryan even called once, stumbling through an apology and a half-hearted offer to pay me back. Someday. I let the calls go to voicemail. Instead, I focused on the things I could control. I finished painting the kitchen. I ordered new curtains. I even booked that fishing trip with Tom for the following weekend. It was a small thing, but it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. And as the days passed, I realized something important. I didn't miss the anxiety, the late-night worries about how to make ends meet. I didn't miss being the family bank. What I missed, truly, was the connection, the honest love and trust that once held our family together. But that had to be earned, not bought. By the time Saturday came, I had my tackle box packed, a fresh sandwich in the cooler, and a sense of hope for the first time in a long while. The world was still turning, and I was still here, stronger than I'd thought. Madison's last voicemail played as I locked the door behind me. Dad, I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it all back. I love you. Maybe that was a start. Maybe someday she'd mean it for real. But for now, I let myself move forward, toward the lake, toward the sunrise, and toward the life I still had left to live. A few weeks passed, and the rhythm of my life grew steady, almost peaceful. I found new joy in small things, a walk through the farmer's market, a book on the porch as the sun set, the laughter of neighborhood kids echoing down the block. I even joined Tom and a few old friends for poker nights again, something I hadn't done since Linda's illness. But I'd be lying if I said I never thought of Madison. Some evenings, I'd catch myself looking at the phone, wondering if she'd call, not for money, but just to talk like she used to. Sometimes I replayed old voicemails just to hear her say, "I love you, Dad," even if I knew those words were complicated now. Then, one Saturday morning in September, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Madison standing there, alone. No suitcases, no makeup, no designer purse, just my daughter, looking tired and small, her eyes red from crying. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she stepped inside, hesitating on the threshold like she was a little girl again. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, Madison." She fidgeted with her hands, glancing around the house as if seeing it for the first time in years. The kitchen gleamed with fresh paint. The air smelled of coffee and the last of summer's flowers from the garden. "I just wanted to talk," she finally said, voice trembling. "Not about money. Not about the mortgage. Just talk." I nodded, gesturing for her to sit at the kitchen table, the same spot where, months ago, I'd handed her everything I had. We sat in silence for a while, the clock ticking on the wall, sunlight moving slowly across the room. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said quietly. Really sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I got scared, and I made bad choices. I took you for granted. I didn't know what else to do. I looked at her, really looked, seeing not just the daughter who'd lied, but the one I'd raised, who once trusted me with all her fears and dreams. I know you're sorry, Madison, I said gently. But you have to understand, love doesn't mean endless sacrifice. You have to want a relationship, not just a rescue. She nodded, eyes filling with tears. I miss Mom. I miss you. I miss how things used to be. We can't go back, I said. But we can try again. If you're willing to be honest this time. For the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of hope in her face. I want to be, Dad. I want to try. No more lies. We talked for hours, not about money or debts or weddings, but about memories, about Linda, about the future. She told me about her struggles, her fears, her regrets. I listened, not as her banker or her fixer, but as her father. By the time she left that afternoon, something between us had started to heal. It wasn't perfect. Trust takes time to rebuild. But for the first time, I felt like maybe we could find our way forward, step by step. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the stars appear above the old oak tree. The house was quiet, but not lonely anymore. I thought of Linda, hoping she'd be proud of me for finally learning how to let go, and how to stand up for myself, even when it hurt. Madison called once a week after that, sometimes just to share a story or ask for advice. Ryan even sent a polite message, thanking me for everything I'd done, though I doubted we'd ever be close. I made plans for the holidays, maybe a simple dinner with Madison if things stayed steady. I'd stopped expecting miracles, but I found peace in small progress, and in the knowledge that I'd finally given myself permission to live my own life. Sometimes, the hardest part of being a parent is letting go of the hope that you can always save your children. But sometimes, letting go is exactly what gives them the space to grow. As summer faded into autumn, I realized something important. I was still a father. But now, I was also my own person again, a man who had given much, lost much, but learned, at last, how to choose himself. And that, I decided, was a good ending after all.